and welcome to the 24th episode of the Unsigned Manager Podcast. Almost at a quarter of a century, shout out to me, I will say I'm pretty proud. My name is Siji Kolawole, and each week I try and take a look at football's biggest stories, headlines, events, from both the past and the present. Take a look at the situation, analyse it, and see what's really going on. Now, this week's episode is me long-winded apologising / admitting I was wrong whilst talking about a bunch of different things. So if you're like me and you've got a scatty brain, this is going to be a bit iffy. But what I really want to talk about is strikers, and this is based on two number 9s from two different eras, both revered for their brilliance, but both going about the game very differently. That's the point. A poacher and a creator, selfish and unselfish. This week's episode is about Ruud van Nistelrooy and Karim Benzema. So let's get into the episode. Alright, just off the bat, this isn't actually a career comparison. Personally, I think Benzema is quite a bit better than Van Nistelrooy, but it's not the point for this episode. I'm not going to be going through their whole careers and comparing them like I did with Ibra and Eto'o or Robin and Bale. This isn't one of those. The reason I wanted to go over these guys is because A, Van Nistelrooy is the gold standard for an old school penalty box striker. And I just find players like him really interesting because of how different the game is now. B, Benzema has started this season like he has a personal vendetta against me for suggesting he might have been a bit past it at the end of the season. Honestly, sometimes I get things so wrong. And C, they operate so differently that it's interesting to imagine that they both play in the same position, and that's the key point. That's the bulk of what this episode is about. Alright, blast from the past. Let's start with Ruud van Nistelrooy. Firstly, whenever I say his name, I think of the wrestler RVD, and then I want to start frog splashing all over the place and running around like a madman. And RVD he was a fun wrestler, but Van Nistelrooy's been on my brain lately because of all the talk about quality strikers. Now, this leads on to another long-winded convo, and if I start going down tangents, I apologise, but how you define world-class is a real big problem in football. Every day, someone is saying, oh, he's world-class, or he's world-class, or that right there, that's world-class, and that's, you can't do that. Not everything is world-class. Barely anything is world-class. I believe, my personal definition, is when a player is so good he could walk into 90 to 95% of teams in the world and start. Obviously, not every player can walk into every team because of other players in that position. But if you can't instantly think that guy would walk into a European Championship side, or he'd be at an elite club starting every week, you're not world class. And right now, there's a real lack of world class strikers. It's likely because inside forwards have become more in vogue, so rather than needing a 9 to get goals, you can have a Mbappe or a Salah or a Raheem Sterling get your goals instead. Or some clubs would rather have their main threats go from out to in, or the old guard of top strikers from the 2010s are aging out, like Aguero and Suarez and Ibra. Or maybe it's just because it's hard to be a striker. Being a striker, everyone says it's the hardest position on the pitch, and when I used to play, I used to think to yourself, it's not really that deep in it. All you got to do is finish. But actually, when you think about the game a bit more, it's such a pain in the arse because sometimes you can barely ever touch the ball. When that ball flashes across the box, you've got to be the guy. But by my eye, please don't argue with me as well, because I don't care. By my eye, the world-class strikers in the world, strikers, not wide men, are Robert Lewandowski, Karim Benzema, Harry Kane, but he is pushing it right now. His form is pushing it, but we know about Harry Kane, Romelu Lukaku, and Erling Haaland. I think that's it. I have no idea what Mbappe is, but if I had to make a decision, I'd lean towards a wide man. So I think there's 5 world-class strikers. If you think Mbappe is a 9, then there's 6. But for right now, I'm just counting 5. Alright, so let's go through them. Robert Lewandowski's in his 30s. I think he's 31 now, will turn 32 this season. Karim Benzema is either 32 or 33. Harry Kane is pushing to go to one club. Romelu Lukaku just moved to one club for big money. So unless you can afford the 130 to 150 mil to £2 billion for Erling Haaland, there isn't a striker for you to buy. There's no world-class striker available for a team to sign for the long term. Manchester City need a striker. Liverpool would be outrageous with a serious number 9. Barcelona could do with anyone. There are a few teams who could be on the prowl for a top striker, but there just isn't one available. And then you still have to decide on what style you want, because a lot of those players play very differently. Whenever you see, if you're on Twitter one day scrolling, and if you're not a big Bundesliga like every week watcher, and you see Haaland scored, the goal is normally this. Dortmund have won the ball in their own half. Ball gets shifted out straight to a wide man into space. Then you see Haaland run in the frame and run over or run past at least 4 defenders. It gets squared across the box. His movement is so sharp that he smashes it before the defender even realises where he is, because he's a counter-attacking terrorist. He's a physical monster who's got slick movement, but he's so powerful defenders can't really do anything about him. Karim, Benzema and Harry Kane are probably the most similar, because they can drop off deep, play make almost as well as they can score, and pull off defenders to make space for themselves that a Vinicius or a Son or Rodrigo can run into. Romelu Lukaku is best when he plays in behind, thrives on having space to run into, because he's a problem to deal with at full speed because he's so big. The best highlights from him with Inter Milan, the one that I pull off my mind, I think, is Sevilla. I feel like it's Sevilla in the Europa League. There's definitely a Europa League goal. Might be Lazio. Don't worry about who it was. Lukaku picks up the ball in his own half, decides he wants to run for about 60 yards. No one can stop him, and he smashes it in. And it's like, oh my goodness, if you give this guy space to run into, RIP you as a defender. Robert Lewandowski is probably the closest to what people call an old school striker, where he can play with his back to goal. You can't really deal with him in the air. As soon as he pins you, he's too strong. You can't go anywhere. And he's a penalty box finisher. But Lewandowski's game is way more developed than what I would say Mark Hughes was, or an Alan Shearer was, arguably. Lewandowski's of different ilk. When Souness and Keane moan about the modern game and the lack of proper strikers, what they mean is a penalty box finisher who, when the ball goes into him, you can count on him to get in front of his man, turn and finish. Robert Lewandowski. Dimitar Berbatov was an older example of this. Robbie Fowler in the 90s is a poster boy of a striker who play into him, he's going to spin the defender, he's too fast for him, boom, finish in the bottom corner, goal. But nobody exemplifies an old school, selfish 20-goal a season, penalty area, fox in the box striker better than the rude boy Ruud van Nistelrooy. If you're 16 and under, or if you aren't too uninformed, there are 2 things which explain Ruud van Nistelrooy more than anything else. Number 1, he scored 150 goals for Manchester United in 219 games. 95 goals in 150 games in the league. Number 2, although he was one of the greatest strikers of his eras, Van Nistelrooy was so single-minded about goal scoring that his teammates, his manager, his fans knew him as being so selfish that it started to hurt the team. Everything you ever hear about Van Nistelrooy is, if United won 5-0 and he didn't score, he smashed up the changing room. Just to highlight this, by the way, Van Nistelrooy is at United in the late 90s, early 2000s. I think he might join in 2000 or 2001. Think about the players that are playing in the team at the time. David Beckham, Ryan Giggs. You might have the end of York and Cole. He's dead when Rooney comes. Ronaldo comes. Van Nistelrooy got 20 assists in 219 games. As a 9 in that team, you can tell that all he wanted to do was finish. But the reason Van Nistelrooy has been on my mind is because I have been banging on week after week, day after day, about strikers. The thing about football is that in any day, it can cause you to completely change your decision based on a perspective you didn't think about. So this is where I'm going to be backtracking and going crazy, and my fault. Basically, long story short, I was wrong. Too long didn't read, just like I read it, I was wrong. I think about the game pretty much all the time, to be honest. When I'm chilling, doing nothing, whatever, my mind's on football. A lot of people who are journalists or media people about football, the game is split two ways. You either look at football from a narrative point of view or from a tactical X's and O's point of view. But both of those two things can overlap. So, for example, Manchester City going on a tear to try and find a striker in the summer is a narrative piece. People write stories about it. Jamie O'Hara screams about it on TalkSport. I hate when I see TalkSport on my timeline. Sky Sports get all kind of people to go on Zoom calls and talk about it. Sign me up, by the way, I'm down. But also from a tactical point of view, it's very important because it greatly impacts how the league will go that season. And it changes the way Manchester City set up. Some things are all narrative. Some things are all tactical, and some things fall in the middle. Then what happens is people like me, like chatty patties about football, look through all the news and decide which sections they want to talk about. So if you're a journalist, storyteller, great at taking a topic and breaking it down and making it really narrative and fun to follow, then you're probably going to look at the narrative side of the game. If you're a super in-depth tactician who loves things like coach's voice and your mind is so X's and O's about how to tactically break down a team, you're going to take the tactical side of the game. I'm a bit of a flip-flopper, deciding which way I want to go depending on the topic. Now, about Manchester City strikers, I didn't look at it from the right lens. I promise you, this has something to do with Van Nistelrooy and Benzema. Based on his career in the Prem, Van Nistelrooy, when he was at his most dangerous, what do we know about this guy? He wasn't the best creative for others. He wasn't exactly a neat and tidy player. His technical ability wasn't... He's not Luis Suarez. He's not Robin Van Persie. And he was a threat from 18 yards in. I don't think Van Nistelrooy ever scored a goal outside the box for Manchester United. Either, I know, this is one of those things that I know from general football trivia. He either scored none or he scored one. But I think it's zero. He wasn't exactly dropping deep and vacating the space for people to run into. He's not a great attacking passer to make chances for others. He's not creative enough to think about anything other than goal scoring. And that's not a problem. That's an old school nine. But Van Nistelrooy just wants to score goals. He's not Benzema. When I was using all my brain power, wondering why on earth big football minds like Ferran Soriano and Cheeky Bergestan can't clearly see what I can see, how Manchester City, the people who run Manchester City's recruitment can't see what I can see. This is the part I was missing. I'm watching the first few games of the season, watching the PSG game, watching the Liverpool game, watching them against Southampton, and thinking to myself, how on earth did this team not get a striker? Against Tottenham, how did they not have a 9? If they did, the league would have been a write-off. Can you imagine this Manchester City team, this 100, well, not far from the team that got 100 points, a team that got 98 points, the team that made it to a Champions League final, who made it to a Champions League semi-final recently. They don't have a 9, and if they did, everyone would be terrified. What I didn't account for was Pep's super specific football vision. Now, this is another annoying side point about things like this is where you miss. If you are looking at a tree of the game, you miss stuff like this. Also, my fault for everyone, this is really obvious to. I was just having a brain fart. There are two types of managers. There are guys who have one football style and they mostly stick to that regardless of what is happening. If a bomb hit the planet, they're going to play the same way. If football went from 11-a-side to 7-a-side, they play the exact same way. The best example of managers like this are Sarri, Marcelo Bielsa, Arsene Wenger. Literally, unless a bomb went off, they will play the same way. Then there are flexible guys who can do a little bit of this and then do a little bit of that and decide this week is the way and decide that week is the way. Those are guys like Luis Enrique, Thomas Tuchel, Carlo Ancelotti. They can bend and mold the team to play in the most effective way for that week. They don't just play one idea. Neither way is wrong, really. Carlo Ancelotti is just as successful as anyone else, just as successful as Pep. Maybe not just as, but not far. Sarri won the European competition playing this way. Thomas Tuchel won one playing that way. It just depends on what kind of teams you have. Manchester City have so many playmakers behind the nine that I didn't actually think that the nine would have to be creative as well. The way I was looking through it is, if you have a Grealish and a Mahrez and a Bernardo and a KDB, you've got all these people, all you need is a goal scorer and job done. If you had Mason Greenwood up top, someone who can finish like any other, then good luck to the rest of the league. I wasn't thinking about the fact that the nine has to be creative as well. This is where I was thinking about Van Nistelrooy. I'm screaming and shouting for weeks saying City need an old school penalty box striker. Just stand on the edge of the 6-yard box, you'll get 20 goals a season by moving your feet. If you have a Van Nistelrooy up front, someone that doesn't contribute to general play, whose technical skills aren't as adept at playing between lines, that aren't as good as linking up with others, that carousel of rotating players behind the striker would lack the space and the gaps to be as effective as they want to be. Can you imagine if in this team, a Bernardo Silva didn't have the space to drop in between the lines when he wants to, because he knows that Foden will move out the way and Mahrez will move out the way. He's got that gap. There's nothing more annoying when you read Pep's book. There's nothing more annoying to him than players standing in the same section of the pitch. I think he divides the pitch up into 18 segments. Rule is 2 players can't be standing in the same segment at the same time. They can't be in the same line at the same time. My bad. They can't be in the same line. If you think about the pitch, looking from goal to goal, you can't be standing in the same line. Bernardo Silva can't go and fill in up front if there's a 9 there. He's not going anywhere. If Ruud van Nistelrooy is in that team, Phil Foden can't go and stand off next to the centre-backs if he wants to. He can't go and play in that gap just behind because there's someone there. Raheem Sterling can't duck inside and make that darting run because there's someone there. Even Sergio Aguero, up there, one of the best strikers of this generation, he had to adapt his game when Pep came. And everyone was thinking he couldn't link up well enough. He's just gonna want to play up front. Pep's going to end up selling him and using Jesus. Aguero had to adapt his game. I promise you, I'm not a stupid football mind, but this genuinely just occurred to me that a specific type of 9 is who Pep would need to finish off this system. And either that player doesn't exist or there isn't anyone available to sign. Because back to that world-class list, if you're Manchester City, you're not signing a below tier 2 player. Imagine tier 1 is world-class, you're not signing below tier 2. And tier 2 might be, and I mean tier 2 for like striker's ability, not maybe tier 2 as world-class players, but tier 2 striker's ability. You're not going to go grab a Mauro Icardi. He's not going to work for you. He can finish just as well as the rest of them, but he's not going to... If you can afford more, why not get more? If you can afford a Kane, why settle for an Icardi? If you can afford a Lukaku, why settle for an Aubameyang? What's the point? Go and compete. The teams you're competing with, Manchester United, Chelsea, Bayern Munich, Real Madrid, Barcelona, when they had money, they're not afraid to splash cash. And if you're Manchester City and you're looking at PSG, you're not going to go grab some Kelechi Iheanacho, who's a good player. Actually, probably would work in this system. Shout out to Iheanacho, he'd probably be amazing now. But you're not going to go for that. You're going for world class. A pure finisher like a Vardy or an Icardi, or who else bags a bunch of goals? Put Ibra in there, for example. They'd probably score 1 million goals in the system, but the team chemistry would be so much worse because there wouldn't be that space for someone to go in there and drop into that pocket because there's already a 9 there in that space, and there's no point having 2 people so close. You can't make the space for runners in behind because they're in that gap. It just clogs up the game. That's what makes players like a Sterling or Jesus dangerous in this system. The absence of people clogging up the front line means there's more space for you to dart into, and as a centre-back, there's probably nothing more It's probably nothing worse as playing Manchester City thinking, I have no idea who I'm going to have to defend. If Mahrez drops in that pocket, he plays completely differently to a Sterling, who plays completely differently to a Ferran Torres, who's nothing like Kevin De Bruyne, who doesn't really play the same style as Phil Foden. And as a centre-back, you have to defend every one of them very differently. Old school days, if you're Alan Shearer, you think to yourself, I'm going to have Sol Campbell all day. And if you're Sol Campbell, you think, I'm going to have Alan Shearer all day. Nowadays, I could have 12 people I have to defend because I can't even have to worry about Edison. I have to worry about João Cancelo coming from left back and playing number 9. Again, I know that this is obvious now, but I didn't connect the dots before. This is me taking it back. I'm just annoyed I didn't see it before because the literal example of this is on the other half of town. Cristiano Ronaldo is an all-time great, and he's having a great start to his United second career. But you can see that he is the inverse of Mason Greenwood's productivity. Before Ronaldo settled in, Greenwood banging. Off the ball darting runs in behind. On the ball creating, linking up much better. Now Ronaldo's there, Greenwood much worse. Not that he's playing badly. It's just that he's Cristiano Ronaldo. If you sign him, you might as well try and get the best out of him. And the best out of him is making him the focal point. United were a freer attacking team last season. And even though they were scoring goals, it's a lot more focused on one main man now rather than Cavani, who can draw the best out of the other forwards in your team. Other than the fact that he's a world-class striker, Harry Kane's style suits Manchester City down to a T because he's a creative 9. He's like a 9.5. He can be like a 9.5, like a Griezmann or a Dybala or a Iheanacho. But he can be a bully ball striker. But he can also be the best number 10 in the league. But since Spurs said no, there aren't many other players that can match his skill set. So now it makes me realise why Manchester City didn't just go for an old school striker. Didn't just go for someone who could bag goals. Put Andre Silva in this team, he probably bangs 1 million goals. Put Jonathan David in here, he gets more than a few, but it's not the style. This is why I thought of Benzema. Put Benzema in this team and Lord help the league. This is a guy who I said at the beginning of the season, just randomly, Benzema's a bit old now. He might be a bit washed. Real Madrid need a new striker because they're going to sign Kylian Mbappe. Turns out I was so heavily wrong, and I shouldn't have said that, because Benzema has got like 16 goal involvements in 8 games or something stupid. Every week the numbers get worse and worse. In 2 weeks' time it will be 100 goal involvements in 9 games. Against Spain the other day, Benzema was amazing. There's a thing that an Arsenal player said this week. Ainsley Maitland-Niles said that Mesut Ozil used to play like he had all the time in the world, yet he always had space. No one could ever get near him. And that's what it feels like Benzema's like when you watch him. Even though he's playing up front and he's dropping into the gap, so defenders are chasing him and defensive midfielders are chasing him and there's runners all around and he needs to make the right decision, it feels like he's not playing with any stress. Benzema's chilling. And the link-up he's got with Mbappe was a bit iffy at the Euros. Didn't quite click, but now feels like through the Nations League. Shout out to the Nations League. I don't mind it. Benzema and Mbappe is a serious front two. That is a problem. Because Benzema is such a great and attacking passer and he's so smart on the ball and he's so comfortable with both feet that he can find Mbappe and Mbappe can find him, knowing that Benzema will make the right decision either to shoot or to let off to him. Put Kareem the Dream in this team with Grealish and Mahrez and De Bruyne, and you've essentially got another player who can play behind the 9, but you also have a 9 who's at, what is he, 3rd in the Champions League goal scoring list of all time, maybe 4th. Constantly scores goals. Off the top of my dome, he's got 77 in the Champions League. If that's right, then someone should give me a cookie or something if I pulled that off my head. Benzema would be phenomenal, but because he's probably not leaving Madrid anytime soon because he is Madrid at this point. I see why Manchester City just decided to run back the trio of cams thing rather than find a nine. It makes more sense now. So essentially, I was wrong. I apologise to Pep and all you guys. And it might take me a while to work out some stuff. But the point is that this is my podcast. So if I want to work out everything about football, you can't tell me anyway. Thanks, guys. Thanks for the listen and all the support. Hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully there's not too much rambling. Hopefully if you're a Manchester City fan, you're not thinking to yourself, duh, obvious. That's why we didn't sign one ages ago. How do you not know that? Because my bad. I hope Man City do get one though. I really wish Kane would have come, and if it looks like Chelsea are going to win the league this year, if it looks like that by January, City should go battering around balls to the wall for Harry Kane. Slap the money down on the table. News came out today that Erling Haaland is PSG's #1 target for next season, which makes sense because he's Haaland. And if Mbappe's going to leave, then why not replace him with the next best guy, the next best young guy? City, forget that. Go for Kane. Haaland would be great, and his link-up play is quite good, but anyway, Kane would be much better. But thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Appreciate all the support, all the listens, all that stuff. Loving the game right now. Loving watching the game. Loving talking about the game and really enjoying the podcast. I'll see you guys next week. Peace.